Hey guys, this is Michael Howe and I'm with Outdoors Adventures, and I figure I'd take this lunch break to talk about an arrow setup I just got in the mail called Valkyrie. So the other day I talked to Brent Hahn, the owner of Valkyrie, and I asked him, I told him about a story, a situation I had this fall where I shot an elk at 15 yards and I shot it directly over the heart. And somehow that arrow deflected off a rib and went sideways into the lungs and into the guts. Now I was able to shoot a second arrow into the elk and we were able to harvest that elk. You guys will see it in the video. But I was pretty discouraged. I didn't understand how an arrow could be deflected off a rib so easily. Yeah, it was a big rib, but why? Considering I was using this setup. I was using a Hoyt RX1 with 80-pound limbs, with an 82-pound pull, 30-inch draw, shooting an arrow 350 feet per second, a 410 grain arrow at 106 pounds of energy. So, this was a killer setup, I thought. And in talking to Brent, we kind of reviewed that the biggest issue was my arrow setup. I have a really long pull, a really powerful pull, but without the right arrow setup, you can still have issues on pass through. And this is what happened. There was two issues. Number one, I was shooting a 100 grain striker. If you look at the striker, yes, it's really sharp, but it's got a very, very wide angle there on the blade. So as it enters the deer, if it hits a rib, it's deflected very easily. The other issue is my weight was back. My weight was back here. So as that arrow comes into the deer, if it hits a rib, it takes a little bit of deflection here, and then you have all this energy behind it pushing it into another direction. That's why weight forward works for your bigger games like your moose and your elk. You'll notice, look at that angle. Look at that. That's not going to get deflected very easily. And what's also really neat is you have this. This is a titanium center shaft with a carbon tool steel broadhead. Look at how far that goes past the insert. So when you assemble this, you have pretty much protection from this setup all the way back into here. So this arrow is really designed ground up to break bone and get full penetration. And then I asked Brent, I said, yeah, but it's only 1 inch cutting diameter. There's other broadheads out there, fixed broadheads that have, 1 1/16, 1 1/8, even up to 1 1/2. How can you, compete, and how is this better? And he goes, it made perfect sense to me. He goes, I'd rather have this getting the cut path on a full pass through of the animal than getting 1 inch and 1/16 or 1 inch and 1/8 on this much. He's right. Then on the other side of the animal, you have the faucet. So you have a pass through, and you're not getting deflected by ribs and other bones. So we're going to try these today. This is a 200 grain setup. Weight forward, this is one of the lightest ones he makes. He makes heavier ones. This is the one I'm going to try because I do like speed. I shoot this at 300 feet per second. According to Brent, he's never seen somebody shoot the 200s that fast. So it's a pretty vicious setup. We're going to try it over and out. We're going to quickly shoot 2 different arrows on this lunch break. This is my arrow setup that I used for hunting this fall. It's the one that I got a deflection on, this same setup. It's a 100 grain Montec. And actually I used a striker, but Montec is pretty close. And this is a 410 grain setup. I shoot this at 350 feet per second and 106 pounds of energy. Massive amount of energy in this setup. This here is a Valkyrie, 200 grain. With his arrow setup, it's a 0.24 diameter arrow. And I shoot this at 303 feet per second. And it's a 515 grain arrow setup. So both of these are rock solid. Let's see which one penetrates more. I'm using a target that's pretty much brand new. It's got like 20 arrows in it, but they're all field tips. My wife bought it for me, from Cabela, so it's not the highest quality of targets, but it should give us a quick demonstration. Again, this is not a scientific test. This is more of we're taking lunch break. Let's do a quick review. Let's see what happens. This is the first The first shot with the Valkyrie. Hoyt RX1, 82-pound pull, 30-inch draw. Let's see how it does. That didn't sound very good. That didn't sound very good. That sounded to me like a full pass-through on the target. Okay, so what we've got here, this is the Montec. And I can't quite pull it out because it's got the head on it, so I'll undo it here. And that's what its penetration was. This is the Valkyrie. That is absolutely crazy. Now, this is not a scientific test. Like I said, this is a lunchroom test, lunchroom review. But we're going to put some more effort into this and find out, a little bit more. We're going to do some scientific testing and look at the penetration differences. But so far, it looks amazing.